Welcome to Jipang, realm of the gossamer mists, home of Pimiko. In this town, most NPCs talk in haiku. It's this fantasy language phenomenon where what was once formal speech in the Japanese version is localized as haiku. That meaning a very rudimentary and westernized form of haiku, solely in form with their 17-syllable pattern as the only defining feature left. Drankquest localizations seem to split the community. Some think they take too many liberties and add unnecessary flavor, yet others crave exactly that. So how good are the haiku? Did the localization make good use of this gimmick? Today we'll take a look at a few and talk about how good they actually are and give them a rating. And if you're sitting at home thinking, wow, it's really pretentious to rank art based on perceived quality, then you're 100% correct. I'm still going to try and base my ratings on a few characteristics. I look at coherence and cohesion, which are not to be taken for granted in a few of the worst ones. Jumping from talking about the landscape to who your ruler is gives me a bit of whiplash, for example. I look at concision, which is especially important since the haikus are simultaneously trying to convey information to the player, for example the short introduction to Jipang. I look at intertextuality, or what I specifically mean is cohesion in a broader game-encompassing sense. In other words, whether whatever is said is consistent with what's in the game. If there's no mist at all, then calling Jipang the realm of gossamer mist is kind of odd. And if Pimiko is no longer around after the events, then maybe, just maybe start leaving her out when you introduce the place to foreigners. And to a lesser degree I will look at literary embellishments, but those are pretty rare or just too flat for my taste. The gossamer mist to describe a town without mist is one such example. And this is a bit of a side note, but the home of Himiko has a much nicer ring to it than home of Pimiko, and that alliteration is the only valid argument for why her name should never have been changed. Overall, this first dialogue box doesn't convey a lot of noteworthy detail if we think about the place's defining characteristics. For example, the initial xenophobia is not reflected at all. In fact, you as a foreigner are seemingly greeted by a well-prepared formal haiku. But there's a second layer of an introduction through form alone. It sets the expectation that everyone from here on, save for the children that haven't yet learned formal speech, is going to be speaking in haiku. And that in itself is enough to save this otherwise bland haiku from the worst rating. Keep in mind, I am rating these for what they are, so the standards might seem a bit low, but I give it 2 out of 5 soon to be sacrificed children. Democracy calls, but its cry echoes, hollow, through arid canyons. This haiku can only be found after you beat Orochi. The town is going into a new direction. It's more open to outside influences, and without the ruler, political changes are starting to spread. I love the first 2 verses as they paint an extremely vivid image. Democracy calls, but its cry echoes, hollow, has no right to go this hard. Just don't do what I did and look up hollow echo on Urban Dictionary. I think you can understand what exactly is meant though. Hollow not in the sound quality, but metaphorically, since there's not yet any substance behind it. The road to democracy will be a long and hard one, but the last verse drags it down for me. I should probably not take it literal since there are no arid canyons nearby, but else it seems so arbitrary. Maybe if the priest that is spreading those influences like democracy came from the old Trades Abbey, you could argue that he literally passed through a canyon to get to Jipang. The first 2 verses are really good though, so this still gets 4 out of 5 soon to be sacrificed children. Ideas not our own, seeds blown from distant gardens, may nurture our land. The NPC that says this is right next to the last one, and also at least partly referring to democracy. Here it's even clearer depicted as an outside force, but as nurture and seeds. In general, the localizers used a lot of farmland metaphors. This implies that Jipang is mostly dependent on its agriculture, since seemingly that's what their culture revolves around, but that's just not true when you consider that they have the best smiths in the world and are entirely self-sufficient. But I don't want this to be all about world building. Either way, implying that Jipang post-Awachi is like barren land with room for new crop to grow is quite fitting. And even though most of the information, like the people's change in attitude towards outside forces, are only implied, these 17 syllables are really packed with information. I wouldn't even say that the first 2 verses are redundant. It's crammed full with little details like how they may nurture the land, that single word implying that it was always a matter of them rejecting outsiders, and that further implying that they're now reflecting on it and understanding how it may have resulted in a previous situation. This is what a decent 3 out of 5 soon to be sacrificed children haiku looks like. Moon rises, none sleep, all dwell on Jipang's future, all ponder its past. This is the first of 2 haiku from this NPC, but I think it can stand on its own. The first verse is of course not what you actually see when you visit the people at night, but it's not meant to be taken literal. People are thinking about upcoming changes and it's a tumultuous time. It doesn't have to mean that they literally don't sleep. Then in the second and third verses, the usual expected constructions of dwelling on the past and pondering the future are switched around here. And equally, the NPC begins by talking about the future in the second verse. Then she moves on to talking about the past in the third one. The exact meaning is ambiguous. Maybe it's a reflection of how the shocking reveal that Pimiko was Awachi has turned the world upside down, something that was already hinted at in the first verse. Or maybe it's about people's perception, that they can't yet move into the future because they have yet to come to terms with the past. I think this haiku is written very elegantly. I like how it utilizes the first break from expectation to set up and transition over to the second one. It has a nice amount of ambiguity. I'm feeling a strong 4 out of 5 soon to be sacrificed children on this one. But that's only the first haiku from this NPC. She continues as follows. And what fuels their thought? The fruits of the fertile earth, bread leavened with love. This is the one agricultural metaphor that makes sense, since she's talking about bread. Of course it's past pro toto for all food, and there are a couple of embellishments, for example the alliterations with fruit of the fertile and leavened with love. But this is a haiku that is much less about the form, and way more about this cute little character moment. Being able to see this NPC take pride in her work as a chef and in feeding the people of Jipang. I think it's cute, nothing too deep, but I'm giving it another 4 out of 5 soon to be sacrificed children. Many moons ago, a swordsmith and his consort lived here blissfully, but she was chosen, a gift for cruel Awachi. Thus they fled the town. That is all I know, though in their former abode there's a hammer, left all on its own, abandoned in the forest, a hurried escape. I saw it returned. Their home surrounded by trees, how it misses them. You can fit a lot into a haiku-esque form, if it is nonsense. This NPC is trying to give you information, but what did you actually get from this? Something about their home surrounded by trees? Maybe that has to do with the forest he mentioned. What is the thing that was left all on its own? Their home? Meaning their home is abandoned in the forest, right? But no. Their home is literally right behind him. It's 3 seconds of walking, he's standing right outside it, and the hammer's just lying on the floor. And it's not like he's giving us interesting information. We only care about the hammer because we need it. It's unnecessarily long, has a lot of filler that only serves to enable the form. This is incoherent rambling. I'd still give him at least 1 soon to be sacrificed child. But that bread must have hidden somewhere and nobody can give me clear directions on how to find it.
What you have not seen cannot do you any harm. Unsee me, I beg.
This right here is why people criticize the localization. That NPC here is Yayoi. She was meant to be sacrificed to Awachi, but fled and is currently hiding from the other locals. And when you find her, she mistakes you as a local and is afraid that you'll tell on her. So this here is her plea for mercy. Meaning the third verse makes perfect sense. She wants you to forget she was ever there and not tell anyone. Unsee me, I beg, is totally fine. After reading the French version, I can't help but wonder why they had to use unsee instead of the much more natural forget, but it's nothing major. That being said, the first 2 lines are complete nonsense. What you have not seen cannot do you any harm. Think about this for a second. It's similar phrasing to what you don't know can't hurt you. In other words, ignorance is bliss. But not only does it not apply here, she is the one that wants you to unsee her. So what does it matter if what you've seen could potentially harm you? Your party is doing just fine. Beyond that, it doesn't even make surface level sense. It's not about being able to live without knowing harsh truth. She's saying this in a 5-year-old kid that covers its eyes and hopes bad things go away sort of way. And an NPC saying something nonsensical is not a flaw. At least not inherently. If you want to characterize an NPC as misguided or something, then that's fair game. But they are not trying to characterize her as incoherent. One loose interpretation is that she's implying that the local might be worried that they would get in trouble if anyone else found out that they found out. In other words, Yayoi is saying, "Oh, don't worry, I won't snitch on you for not snitching on me if someone else finds me." But I hope I don't have to explain to you that she's just not in the situation to start her dialogue off by telling whoever found her to not worry about what harm could possibly come to them. There's also an interpretation that she's threatening you. In other words, she implies that she'd kill you if you don't promise to keep her a secret. After the events, you find the divine dagger in the same pot, implying she had one to defend herself with. But it wasn't meant as a threat in the Japanese version where she simply begs for her life. That can't have been the reason why the dagger was put there. And self-contained in the English text, it doesn't come across as a threat because of first, the voice actress's delivery, she doesn't seem to know what the script is getting at either. Second, because of the haiku that immediately follows that is much closer to the Japanese text. And especially third, since she's stuck in a pot and her model is doing the little in distress animation. This one is garbage. I only give it one soon to be sacrificed child and I'd much rather keep even that to myself. A guard's word is law, but to hold on too tightly is to lose one's grasp. Sometimes the localization team has lucid moments and this is one of them. I'm going to leave you to form your own opinions on this one. But for me, it's one whole Owachi's belly worth of soon-to-be-sacrificed children. The standards varied a lot. A few of these haikus are terrible. To write a haiku, one must ignore distractions. Syllables are all. It's easy to criticize this and there's a lot of bad ones. There are way more bad ones than there are good ones that I didn't mention. In general, the ones that have to pack a lot of information into a very precise haiku are much better than the ones that are stretched out to fill all 17 syllables. But there are moments when I genuinely think that this restriction bred new and interesting dialogue. Let's just appreciate this for one moment. Pimiko's dwelling, free now for the use of all. Doors closed, now open. And the lucid moment is over. We're back to doors closed, now open. Doors closed, now open. Doors closed, now open.